what's up? Zach here, and today I am on the rocky shores of the Dutch Caribbean and on the north ridge of the Laurel Highlands to put the all-new Keen WK or Walk 400 to the test in multiple different environments. And a huge thanks to Keen for sending me a pair of these over to sponsor this video and allowing me to get all this information out about what makes a great walking shoe and the science behind what makes a walking shoe. These have definitely been an eye-opener for me as someone who sometimes kind of gets stuck in their ways in terms of what they like to recommend to patients. However, me being someone who has just come off of a pretty bad ankle injury, I really did get a sense of what these were meant to do and a real appreciation for how footwear can either hurt or help a rehabilitation attempt when trying to get back to your previous level of activity. And as their name would suggest, the WK400 is meant as a walking shoe. It is meant to be able to give you a little bit more forward-going momentum to get you out walking easier, faster, and a little bit further than you could in a standard shoe. My main question is, are they any better than just a standard training or running shoe? Let's find out. Now, the uppers of the 400s are pretty interesting. They are a dual layer engineered mesh. But the interesting thing about it is no matter if you're in a cold temperature like this or in a warm temperature like in the Caribbean, they kind of have something for everybody because they are a two-layer engineered mesh. If you pair them with the merino wool sock, they will keep your feet pretty warm in a cold weather climate. However, in a warm weather climate, if you pair them with something, once again, like merino wool or another breathable sock, they will kind of allow that heat to escape. So no matter kind of what situation you're in, the uppers kind of do a little bit of the work for you in terms of temperature regulation. The other nice thing is if you are using these as kind of beachcomber shoes or just kind of everyday shoes where you're slipping them on with no socks on, because they have more natural anti-odor properties to them, they're not going to stink to high heaven like some other shoes will. And if you look at the upper durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, yes, I'm back in the studio. They do have a drag guard on here, a little toe cap guard, and it is pretty thin so it doesn't kind of get in the way of the breathability. However, the Dremel only gets right through that durability guard. It does not get through the mesh layering, which is pretty interesting because these shoes are meant to be used in more kind of low velocity, low speed situations. So, you know, anything more than like a really direct hit to a thorn bush on these, you really shouldn't have any problems with upper durability whatsoever, even if you are going through pretty tough brush. Because these are used for walking, that durability guard, even though it is low profile, is still pretty over-engineered for this type of shoe. Yesterday I had my feet in the sand, in the surf all day. And then this morning woke up and now they are bone dry. Even the insoles in them, you can't really even feel any moisture. And that just shows you the mesh, number one, is incredibly water resistant in the first place. So it just kind of likes to wick the water away in the first place. Because of how the mesh is engineered, it's just able to evaporate that water so much quicker than most other shoes out there. So if you want to wear these on a day where you're going to get them pretty wet or sopping, even in snow or in sand or water, and then the next day need to get up and go again, these are a fantastic pickup. And getting into the midsole teardown, to really understand the midsole of these is to understand the differences between a running shoe and a walking shoe. Because remember, when you're designing a running shoe, that shoe has to be able to act independently, right? Because when you're running, you enter what's called single limb stance, where when one foot comes down on the ground, it's the only thing holding your body weight up, versus on a walking shoe, during walking, you have both feet on the ground, right? The heel of one shoe and the toe of the other, or the forefoot of the other. So when you're designing a walking shoe, and like Keen did with these, they designed it in a constant curve, what they call it. And what that means is your right or left foot is completing that curve, is completing that gait every time. So it's like a locomotive, right and left. And that's how they propulse. And so when you look at the midsole, you see they actually put a nylon plate versus some other materials for the shank, and that goes all the way almost to the back of the heel to the forefoot. And what that does is allows a lot more flexibility and allows that constant motion of your foot to go, versus a stiffer running shoe, which needs to really hold your body weight up because it's the only thing on the ground. Whereas with the Keens, both of the shoes are on the ground, so they're allowed to give a little bit more elastic bend and snap to your movement, and that's what allows that forward momentum along with the natural shape of the shoe and the rocker, which I'll get to in a second. And when you look at the actual geometry of the midsole, you'll notice that the rocker is placed pretty far back in the heel, right? On the midsole teardown, it looks like it just has a pretty big arch on it and then a nice gentle sloping curve. But what that does is it allows the shoe to have a rocker on it, which allows easier forward momentum and easier rolling to the next step. but also it gives it the stability of a shoe that is much more low to the ground. Because you look at the heel to toe drop and you look at how low to the ground the forefoot gets, you'll see that the shoe is propped up in the arch and in the rear foot, which makes these magnitudes of order more stable than other rocker type shoes that place it right in the middle of the shoe or even slightly in the forefoot. And those other types of rocker bottom shoes where they place the rockers further up in the shoe, it almost can kind of make your gait almost kind of like a tiptoeing gait, almost like you're in a weird Halloween movie kind of stalking around a house. And I mean, they're meant to have better rolling, but what ends up happening is your feet just keep trying to find the ground. Whereas on these, it allows such a natural gait, a natural push off from a walk, that when your feet are engaging the ground, or I should say when the toes are engaging the ground, you're getting so much tactile feel in the forefoot that you never feel unstable, even on really rough terrain. Now, looking at the outsole tread of the 400s, as you can see, it is a super chunky delta pattern. And because it is full length on that delta pattern, you can see I've got sand all the way in these crevices. However, the thing still grips incredibly well because the tread is so much wider than most other walking, running, or training shoes out there. And because of that, even though they have a really aggressive rocker on them, they really do well in terms of kind of uneven surfaces because the tread is so much wider and it can grab so much more surface area than most other shoes. And that's what makes them so stable versus some other shoes that may have a rocker in the midfoot, rear foot, or even forefoot. And speaking of that rough and rocky terrain, if you look at the outsole durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, I mean, about 1 millimeter of damage on an almost 4 millimeter tread depth. Now, if you look at the durometer of these, it only comes in at an 8, which is a lot softer than a lot of other like tennis and basketball shoes we see. However, because once again, these are meant for more low speed type situations, that durometer is honestly kind of an asset to these because it allows that tread to kind of grab and kind of almost envelop the surfaces it's on. So the durability profile of these still, for number one, a walking shoe, is tremendous because number one, the rubber compound still has a really good resistance to abrasion, and number two, because of the softness of that rubber. Remember, these are walking shoes, so you're not getting into a lot of high shearing situations unless you're someone that really shuffles your gait. In that aspect, these honestly might not be the best shoe for you anyway. So with all those subtle design elements in there, it makes for a shoe that gives quite a bit of easy propulsiveness, but also a shoe that's pretty darn rugged and durable for a lot of different and kind of weird situations you might get yourself into. But getting into the fit of the 400s, you know, the fit kind of mimics the outsole tread pattern. They do fit pretty generous, so if you are a narrow foot, you might want to consider going down a half size to get a 1-to-1 fit. A medium and a wide width foot, like 2E, can pretty much just go true to size. A 4E, you might want to go up that 1/2 size. Now, these do lock you down pretty well because of the asymmetric lacing system in them. That is also a way to get the shoe to come up off the ground a lot easier if you are nursing an injury, because the laces are on the one side. If you do have some weakness in your anterior compartment of your leg, it still allows these shoes to kind of get up off the ground a lot easier, especially in a walking situation. Now, because of the rocker on these and because of the shape of the arch, you can put an orthotic in these. However, on their own, they're really good for somebody with either a flat, neutral, or high arch. And really, when you talk about what kind of foot ailments these are good and bad for, you know, these shoes are meant to offload injuries to your foot. They're meant to allow your foot to move easier even if you do have some sort of snake-bitten ailment, because the shape of the rocker almost forces your body into a correct walking gait, so it kind of takes out a lot of those kind of inconsistencies in your walking gait. And a lot of those inconsistencies is when you're going to start to get pain after an injury, kind of when you start to overpronate or oversupinate, or you just don't put forth a full heel to toe when you start walking. And so with the rocker design in these, the shoe is doing kind of all the calculations and geometry of how your body should be walking, and therefore when you're putting forth correct ranges of motion, you don't feel as much pain because you're not putting forth all of those kind of abnormal types of motion, which is what is going to start to cause pain on an already painful limb or an already injured limb. And I know for me, you know, coming off of a really bad ankle sprain and sprain on the lateral side and then a break on the medial side or the inside, you know, these were really the only shoes that I could put on and go for normal walking without having pain in them, even without a brace when I was trying to come back from my injury. And number two, I think if you're somebody that's looking to get a little bit more miles in a day, if you do have more of a snake-bitten foot, or are just trying to save your lower limb for something else and trying to use these as more of like a recovery day type shoe, then I think these are also a tremendous pickup. Now, if you're someone that's just trying to get these for work and you stand all day and don't move around, I'm not so sure you're gonna get the benefits of these as, say, someone that's maybe walking up and down all day. I know with me, I'm kind of back and forth all over the place, so I kind of found a real friend in these. But in terms of what they're designed to do, which is walk and allow you to walk further, longer, easier, without pain, there's really nothing on the market that's as good as these or even in the same ballpark as these. So it's really kind of hard to even compare them to anything else because they are just such a standout product. But of course, I'd love to hear your opinion. Are you looking for something like the WK400 or Walk 400 with more of an aggressive walker, something for a little bit more gait assistance, or are you looking for something more flat-soled and low to the ground? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you again, Keen, for letting me beat up your shoes. And if you do want to pick a pair of these up, I will leave a link in the description below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next one.